Across the country, a massive shift is underway.
She purchased 6 months ago, she says, has never left the lot.
For Gus Francis, this is home.
And it's shaking the foundation of American retirement. People 55 and older are abandoning traditional homes and moving into R-Vees at a pace we've never seen before. But here's the truth. Most headlines refuse to touch. They aren't chasing a dream. They're escaping a crisis. Retirement costs blew past reality. Housing turned into a luxury, and the system meant to protect older Americans, it buckled under pressure. Now millions are being forced into a lifestyle they never imagined, trading bedrooms for bunks, neighborhoods for campgrounds, and stability for survival on wheels. And the scariest part is this: the tidal wave is only beginning. 2025 is shaping up to be the year everything breaks wide open, the year the old retirement system finally collapses under its own weight. So what exactly triggered this crisis? The day retirement math stopped working. For decades, retirement planning revolved around a simple benchmark: save 8 to 10 times your annual salary before reaching 60. That rule created the illusion of predictability, as though disciplined saving would always guarantee long-term stability. But the economy shifted faster than the formula kept pace. Wage growth slowed. Costs rose across nearly every category, and the gap between earnings and expenses widened year after year. Households that once followed the old guidance discovered that the numbers no longer align with reality. Inflation consistently eroded the value of every dollar saved, and essentials like food, utilities, and transportation increased at a rate few could keep up with. Even workers with steady incomes found themselves losing ground. The problem is not mismanagement, it is structural. Living costs grew faster than the system accounted for, and fixed targets never adjusted to reflect that change. Saving 8 times your salary once created a cushion. Today, it barely covers a portion of long-term expenses. This mismatch leaves people entering their later years with a plan that collapses the moment it is tested. It is why so many are now looking for alternatives, because the traditional model offers far less protection than it once did. And the next number reveals just how far the system has drifted from financial reality. The $45,000 savings wall. National savings data shows a sobering truth. The median household approaching retirement holds roughly $45,000 in accessible retirement savings. That amount may have offered modest security decades ago, but today it falls short of covering a single year of basic expenses in many parts of the country. This figure matters because it exposes a fundamental flaw in the current retirement structure. Households with consistent work histories, stable incomes, and decades of contribution still fall short of what long-term security requires. Even high earners encounter the same limits. Medical bills, debt, cycles, housing volatility, and financial crises erode savings faster than contributions can rebuild them. Many assumed that earning 6 figures at some point in their career would translate into comfort later. Instead, they find themselves facing the same constraints as households with far lower lifetime earnings. The structure of modern retirement savings, fragmented accounts, inconsistent employer matches, and exposure to market downturns works against long-term stability. This leaves people approaching retirement in a bind. They trim expenses, postpone repairs, or delay medical care to stretch their savings a little further. But these strategies buy time rather than create security. With savings limited and costs rising, the next systemic failure becomes impossible to ignore. And once savings weaken, the loss of the old pension foundation amplifies the pressure even more. If you want more straight talk like this, make sure you like the video and hit subscribe. And if something here lines up with what you are seeing around you, add your voice below. It helps keep these conversations grounded and useful. The collapse of pension stability. Traditional pensions once acted as the anchor of American retirement. Employers contributed steadily, funds were professionally managed, and workers received predictable monthly payments for the rest of their lives. That structure provided certainty that today's retirement accounts cannot replicate. During the late 1970s and early 1980s, regulatory shifts encouraged employers to abandon pensions in favor of individual savings plans. 401k accounts were never designed to replace pension income. They were meant to supplement it. But as companies phased out guaranteed plans, the the burden shifted entirely onto individuals. Workers suddenly became responsible for investment decisions, contribution timing, and market risk, without the training or stability needed to manage those responsibilities. Frequent job changes interrupted contributions. Emergencies forced early withdrawals. Market downturns erased years of growth in a matter of months. The disappearance of pensions removed the only element of retirement that offered durability and predictability. In its place came uncertainty, volatility, and the constant threat that savings might not last as long as needed. This shift left millions without a dependable baseline to cover essential costs, without the guarantee of a monthly pension check. Every rising expense becomes a threat to long-term stability, and nowhere does that instability become more visible than in the rising cost of simply staying housed. Housing costs that triggered the move onto wheels. Housing has become the most immediate and unavoidable financial pressure for households entering their later years. Property taxes that once increased gradually now jump in sharper cycles, often outpacing cost of living adjustments tied to fixed incomes. Homeowners who spent decades paying off their mortgages now face annual tax bills that strain budgets already stretched thin. Renters experience even sharper increases. Across many regions, rents have grown faster than wages for more than a decade, but the acceleration of the past few years has pushed monthly payments beyond what fixed incomes can support. Renewal notices frequently arrive with double-digit percentage increases, leaving households with few realistic alternatives. Utilities add another layer of pressure. Energy rates rise more frequently. Water and waste fees climb as cities try to cover their own infrastructure costs. And extreme seasons create unpredictable spikes in monthly bills. Each added cost chips away at what little margin remains. As these three pressures converge, taxes, rent, and utilities, the total cost of stationary living becomes mathematically unsustainable. Households begin looking for new ways to reduce expenses, often for the first time in their lives. Downsizing options prove limited, and relocating does not always guarantee affordability. This leads many to consider mobility-based living arrangements, including motorhomes, not out of desire but necessity. When the numbers no longer add up, mobility becomes a practical response to financial pressure, and once mobility becomes the only workable path, the reshaping of daily life begins. Liquidating a lifetime to buy mobility. The first step many households take when traditional living becomes unaffordable is liquidating whatever they can. Homes that once represented decades of equity turn into the primary source of survival cash. Vehicles, tools, furniture, and collections are sold off to close financial gaps and build a budget for a more mobile lifestyle. For many, this transition begins as a practical decision, but it quickly becomes a reminder of how fragile long-term planning can be when costs rise faster than income. Liquidating property may bring short-term relief, but it also erodes the foundation that retirement was meant to rest on. Once equity disappears, it cannot be rebuilt easily, especially late in life. What began as a safety net becomes a shrinking pool of money with no guarantee of lasting through the years ahead. Savings accounts that once seemed secure must be stretched further, and long-term investments may be cashed out prematurely. The shift from home ownership to mobility is often driven by rising expenses rather than preference. It is a forced adjustment, reshaping a lifetime of financial decisions in a matter of months. When the dust settles, many realize that the move provided flexibility, but at the cost of long-term wealth. And as people liquidate assets, the broader housing market shows why so many are pushed into this decision faster than expected. The housing recession. The housing market in 2024 and 2025 created conditions that left many older households with limited choices. Inventory shortages pushed competition upward, making affordable homes increasingly difficult to secure. Sellers expected top dollar, while buyers on fixed incomes struggled to match rising prices. Downsizing, once considered a reliable strategy, no longer guaranteed lower expenses. Rent acceleration added another layer of strain. Monthly rates climbed in both major cities and smaller towns, often jumping by double-digit percentages during lease renewals. For people living on fixed incomes, these increases consumed a larger share of their monthly budgets, leaving little room for emergencies or rising utility costs. Attempts to relocate to cheaper areas often proved unsuccessful, as nationwide demand kept rental prices elevated. Mortgage affordability diminished diminished as interest rates climbed. Even modest homes required higher monthly payments, making purchases less feasible for those relying on retirement savings or part-time income. Many older adults found themselves priced out of markets that had been accessible only a few years earlier. These combined pressures created a housing recession for individuals seeking stability later in life. The financial load became heavy enough that mobility-based living started to look less like a lifestyle choice and more like a necessity. And once mobility becomes the fallback plan, the true costs of living in a motorhome reveal themselves quickly. The real price of owning a motorhome full-time. Living full-time in a motorhome offers flexibility, but the financial realities become clear almost immediately. Repairs can appear without warning, and breakdown cycles tend to accelerate with age and mileage. Even well-maintained units require regular attention, from engine service to roof sealing to appliance replacement. Each repair carries a cost that can disrupt careful budgeting. Fuel volatility adds ongoing uncertainty. Take long trips during a period of rising fuel prices, and monthly expenses can swing dramatically. Many travelers adjust their routes to manage fuel consumption, yet even short distances add up when prices remain high. Campsite fees also fluctuate, with popular areas charging premium rates during peak seasons. Long-term stays may offer discounts, but they still represent a recurring expense that must be balanced carefully. Insurance brackets for motorhomes differ from those of traditional vehicles. Coverage tends to be higher due to size, mechanical complexity, and the value of personal belongings stored inside. Premiums vary by region, driving habits, and age of the unit, making planning more complicated. While motorhome living can reduce housing costs compared to renting or paying property taxes, it does not eliminate financial strain. Expenses shift rather than disappear, and the margin for unexpected costs remains narrow. And as mobility becomes a financial strategy, many older adults find themselves working on the road in ways they never anticipated. The roadside workforce. The rise of mobile living has coincided with an expanding network of temporary jobs suited to people traveling in motorhomes. Seasonal labor in national parks, campground staffing, agricultural work, and warehouse contracts all offer short-term income. Many employers value the availability and flexibility of older workers who bring reliability and experience to roles with high turnover. This shift has created a mobile workforce that spans long distances and adapts to changing opportunities throughout the year. Workers travel to peak seasons, settle temporarily, and move on when demand declines. For some, the work provides structure and community. For others, it serves as a financial lifeline that supplements limited retirement income. Jobs once considered transitional or supplemental have become primary sources of support. Hourly wages vary widely, and the physical demands can challenge individuals who expected quieter retirement years. Yet the combination of mobility and employment makes financial survival possible where stationary living no longer can. Campground hosts may trade hours for reduced campsite fees, while warehouse contracts offer short bursts of income that bridge budget gaps. The roadside workforce reflects a broader economic trend. The traditional vision of retirement is being replaced by a flexible, travel-based model where work remains part of daily life far longer than expected. The retirement infrastructure designed to fail. The modern retirement system leaves nearly half of working adults without any employer-backed retirement plan. That gap alone creates long-term instability because consistent contributions are the key to compounding. When individuals move between jobs, work part-time, or experience layoffs, their ability to save becomes fragmented. Each break in contributions reduces future growth, leaving less available when stability matters most. Automatic enrollment, which could ensure every worker builds a savings base, remains absent in much of the country. Without it, participation depends on individual initiative, financial confidence, and timing factors that often disadvantage workers during their younger years. Missed contributions early in life have exponential consequences later because the lost compounding cannot be recovered. Savings leakage adds another layer of fragility. Withdrawals for emergencies or periods of unemployment drain accounts faster than they can be replenished. Every time a worker changes employers, the transition increases the risk of cashing out instead of rolling over funds. These patterns steadily erode retirement balances, turning long-term plans into uncertain prospects. With no universal structure and no guaranteed benefits, the system places full responsibility on individuals navigating fluctuating wages and unpredictable expenses. The result is a retirement model that often collapses before income income even stops. And when predictable income disappears, the next financial burden grows faster than most households can manage. If you want to stay ahead of what comes next, make sure you subscribe. The shifts hitting this market are moving fast, and every update we cover helps you protect your money, your options, and your timing before the next wave arrives. Medical inflation that breaks fixed income. Medical costs rise faster than nearly any other expense faced by households entering their later years. Monthly premiums for supplemental coverage climb steadily, often increasing by significant percentages each renewal cycle. Even with careful budgeting, these jumps strain fixed incomes and reduce the margin available for other necessities. Medication costs follow the same upward trend. Brand name prescriptions frequently climb several times faster than general inflation, and even generic alternatives show steady increases. For individuals managing chronic conditions, the cumulative cost becomes one of the largest components of their annual spending. Skipping doses or rationing medication becomes common, not by choice, but necessity. Gaps within Medicare create additional challenges. Certain treatments, tests, and therapies fall outside routine coverage, leaving households responsible for large, out-of-pocket charges. These unexpected expenses disrupt carefully planned budgets and force tough decisions about which bills to prioritize. Over time, even modest increases in medical spending weaken financial stability. The growing share of income devoted to medical needs leaves little room for emergencies, repairs, or rising utility costs. Each year brings another round of increases that outpace fixed income growth, making long-term planning nearly impossible. And if medical inflation creates the first squeeze, the next layer of rising costs makes everyday survival even less predictable. Inflation categories that hit older Americans hardest. Inflation is often discussed as a single number, but households entering retirement feel it through specific categories that rise faster than headline averages. Food prices climb steadily as supply chains tighten and transportation costs increase. Even basic items such as bread, eggs, and produce consume more of each monthly budget than they did only a few years ago. Utility expenses add volatility. Electricity rates adjust frequently to reflect energy demand and infrastructure pressures, while gas and water services face surcharges tied to maintenance and regional shortages. These fluctuations make budgeting difficult for households relying on consistent monthly income. Service-related inflation grows just as quickly. Routine repairs, home maintenance, and essential labor become more expensive as wages rise in trades and contracting fields. Insurance products, including vehicle, home, and health coverage, add another layer of rising costs that cannot be avoided. When every category outpaces income, financial predictability disappears. These increases do not affect all age groups equally. Individuals still. Working may adjust by earning more or shifting schedules, but those living on fixed incomes cannot offset the rising expenses. Each additional dollar spent on basics removes a dollar that once supported long-term plans. And when inflation strikes every essential category at once, the financial floor once supporting the middle class begins to crumble. The middle-class financial floor collapses. For decades, middle-income households expected their careers to guarantee a stable retirement. Teachers, engineers, skilled tradespeople, and long-term managers assumed that consistent work and disciplined saving would secure comfort in their later years. Yet rising costs have erased those expectations. Even households with steady employment histories find themselves confronting expenses that grow faster than their resources. The erosion of savings happens gradually. Small withdrawals for emergencies, medical bills, or repairs chip away at long-built reserves. Inflation amplifies the effect by reducing the purchasing power of each remaining dollar. Over time, decades of careful planning can vanish in only a few difficult years. The loss of financial predictability pushes many middle-income households toward decisions they never anticipated. Some take on part-time work late in life, while others downsize rapidly or relocate to areas with fewer services. The shift from stability to uncertainty occurs quietly, but its impact is profound. As these pressures accumulate, middle-income households begin facing the same challenges once associated primarily with low-income workers. Budgets tighten, unexpected bills threaten long-term plans, and mobility becomes a financial strategy rather than a preference. The safety that once defined middle-class life grows thinner each year, making traditional retirement far less attainable. And with the middle-class foundation weakening, let's talk about how mobility becomes the final financial refuge for many. Motorhome communities becoming the new financial refuge. As stationary living grows more expensive, scattered groups of travelers have formed small communities built around motorhome living. These informal camps appear near vacant lots, rural roadways, and overlooked corners of public land. They operate on shared understanding rather than formal rules, offering a level of support that traditional housing markets no longer provide. Every person brings a different story, yet all arrive with the same underlying motive: lower overhead and a chance to rebuild stability on a tighter budget. Resources are shared out of necessity. Individuals exchange tools, split repair knowledge, or assist with maintenance tasks that would be costly in a traditional shop. Water, fuel, and supplies are pooled whenever possible. Some camps develop small trade systems where services are exchanged for temporary placement. Contributions might include cooking, cleaning, or assisting older travelers with repairs. These arrangements help stretch limited savings further, but they also reveal how fragile the entire structure can be. Even with reduced costs, these communities operate on thin margins. One breakdown, one medical bill, or one unexpected expense can disrupt months of careful planning. The stability offered by shared living is real, yet it depends entirely on conditions that remain unpredictable. These communities represent resilience, but they also show how close many households are to financial collapse. And as these communities grow, local governments begin responding in ways that reshape the mobility landscape entirely. Local governments fighting mobile residents. The rise of visible motorhome communities has led many local governments to implement measures aimed at controlling or dispersing mobile residents. Parking bans expand into areas where overnight stays were once tolerated. Towing operations increase, often targeting units parked for only short periods. Some cities introduce new ordinances restricting where motorhomes may stop, citing public safety or neighborhood concerns. These rules add direct financial pressure. A single fine can dismantle an already strained budget, and towing fees can exceed several days of living expenses. Even short-term enforcement campaigns push travelers to relocate frequently, increasing fuel usage and accelerating wear on older units. For many households, the constant movement becomes its own financial burden. Lot crackdowns are particularly disruptive. Businesses that once overlooked overnight parking now restrict access due to local pressure or liability concerns. This reduces the number of safe, dependable places to rest, forcing travelers into costlier campgrounds or isolated areas that lack essential services. Each restriction narrows the already limited list of options available to people living on fixed incomes. The conflict between local governments and mobile residents reflects a deeper tension within the economic landscape. Communities seek control while travelers seek stability. This clash becomes especially visible as the population of mobile households continues to grow. And the numbers behind that growing population reveal why 2025 marks a turning point. 2025 becomes the tipping point year. 2025 stands out as a year where demographic forces and economic pressures converge. A large wave of older adults reaches retirement age without the savings or pension support previous generations enjoyed. At the same time, rising housing costs continue to push more households toward mobility as a financial necessity rather than a lifestyle choice. This combination creates unprecedented demand for motorhome spaces, seasonal work opportunities, and low-cost living arrangements. Delayed retirements become increasingly common. Individuals who once expected to stop working now find themselves extending their careers or taking on part-time work to close widening financial gaps. Forced downsizing accelerates as homeowners sell properties they can no longer maintain or afford. Many funnel the remaining equity into motorhomes, hoping mobility will provide a safer financial path. The shift creates a supply and demand imbalance. More travelers compete for limited campground sites, inexpensive parking locations, and seasonal jobs. Prices for long-term stays begin rising, and even remote areas experience pressure as the number of mobile households grows. The resulting competition raises costs in spaces that were once considered budget-friendly. This demographic surge marks a clear tipping point. The system can no longer absorb the number of people seeking mobile living solutions, and the consequences of that shift ripple through every corner of the motorhome economy. And as these pressures unfold, the next chapter shows what this means for every household preparing for the years ahead. The financial future every household will face. The long-term consequences of the retirement system's failures will shape the financial landscape for years to come. Wage growth may remain inconsistent, leaving younger workers with fewer opportunities to build stable savings. Housing markets may continue pricing out households that once expected to downsize comfortably. As these patterns persist, mobility is likely to remain a central strategy for those seeking financial flexibility. Saving structures will also change. Without reliable pensions or universal retirement plans, individuals will continue relying on fragmented accounts that do not offer long-term security. Each job change, economic downturn, or emergency withdrawal reduces future stability. The cycle repeats across generations, creating widespread uncertainty about how much retirement will truly cost. Property markets could see further strain as fewer households can afford traditional homes. This may lead to increased demand for smaller living spaces, alternative housing models, and mobility-based arrangements. As mobility becomes more common, the need for designated spaces, affordable campsites, and safe parking locations will grow. Prices will adjust accordingly, affecting households directly within the next 30 to 60 days as new policies and market shifts take effect. The financial future will require households to adapt quickly, evaluate costs carefully, and reconsider long-standing assumptions about retirement. The choices made now determine whether stability grows or erodes further, especially as rising expenses, shrinking savings, and unpredictable markets reshape what security truly means. Those who plan proactively, monitor shifting costs, and adjust early will preserve far more control over their long-term stability. That's the reality unfolding right now, and it's hitting faster than anyone expected. But what about you? Are you seeing signs of this shift in your town, your family, your own retirement plans? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Your perspective helps keep these conversations real. If you found this breakdown helpful, hit that like button and make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss the next update.